So, if you've recently been promoted, or maybe you've just volunteered for the glorious title of a manager, then congratulations! You've just been handed the keys to a kingdom of emails, meetings, and, of course, people problems. So, naturally, you're thinking, how do I not mess this up? Don't worry, I got your back. In this video, I'll break down 10 essential tips which you can start applying today and that will help you thrive as the first-time manager. Let's get into it. Tip number 1. Embrace the power shift. With great power comes great responsibility. So, if you were under the impression that the only thing that changed with your promotion is that you now have a cooler title and more money, think again. You're no longer just one of the team, you're now the boss. The people who used to be your peers are your employees now. So, get ready for the fact that some people will be looking at you differently and you will have to re-establish those relationships. If you are buddies with some of them, that should not affect your business decisions. There should be clear boundaries, at least when it comes to work. If you don't revamp those relationships early, then you run into the risk of your buddies taking advantage of you, which will erode your fresh and fragile authority with the rest of the team. Tip number 2. Forget your old job. You may have been great in your old position as an individual contributor. You may have loved it and everyone thought that you were great in it. And that's probably one of the reasons why you got promoted in the first place. So good for you, but it's over now. Don't make a mistake of procrastinating in your new job because you're scared of taking on its challenges by being unreasonably helpful and still doing too much of your old job too. It may be the case that the company hasn't found a replacement for you yet, or they need you to train your replacement, but your allocation of time should be dramatically skewed towards your new role, because that's the role in which you need to succeed now and which you will be judged for in the future, so you should prioritize accordingly. Which brings us nicely to tip number 3. Learn to say no. One of the easiest traps to fall into, especially when you're in a new managerial role where you have to prove yourself, is being too agreeable. You may feel like you need to say yes to most of the requests from your employees, your boss, other departments, clients, and so on, just to show how hardworking, empathetic, and switched on you are. And guess what happens next? You get overwhelmed, you don't get the basics right, you start messing up on all the many things that you've committed to, and your team starts lagging behind too, directionless and overworked, and you reach just the opposite result of impressing everyone. Remember, you got this job for a reason. You deserve it, and you should be confident enough to say no to things that are not a priority for you or your team right now. And speaking of priorities, tip number 4. Establish your authority. This is something that you should really be focusing on from the very start and never really let up. Because without it, nothing else will work. Just because you are now a manager or the boss doesn't make your team to respect you automatically in this new role. Also, remember that saying, "I'm the boss," has the exact opposite effect. A true boss never has to say it. People just know it because he or she earned it. And you have to earn it too, by being consistently good in key management skills which would show your team that you are someone who they can rely on for guidance and progression of their own skills and careers. Tip number 5. Be a clear communicator. You should be crystal clear about things like your role and the roles of your employees, about the goal of your team as a whole for the next 12 months, and also the individual goals, expectations, and deliverables for everyone. And for that, you need to communicate effectively. You may have the very best ideas, plans, and what even may seem to you as clear objectives for everyone, but if the message is jumbled before it reaches the hearts and the minds of your employees, then it all becomes useless. Effective communication in management goes beyond sending out emails that no one reads. It's about clarity, consistency, and connection. Ensure your messages are clear and concise. Remember, the jargon can confuse rather than clarify. Use various channels from meetings to instant messages just to keep communication flowing both ways. And encourage an open door policy where your team feels comfortable sharing ideas or concerns without fear of reprisal. And just a very quick pro tip here. Be as direct as possible. You do need to be professional at all times, but that doesn't mean that you have to talk to people as if you always have HR, compliance, and legal guys in the room all at the same time. Tip number 6. Be decisive. As a manager, people look to you for direction. It's okay to admit when you don't have all the answers, but you do have to make a call. Trust me, indecision is way more exhausting than making a call and adjusting later. Just pick a path and go for it. Your team will respect your confidence even if you have to pivot somewhat later. In fact, here's the little truth of life for you. At the core of managerial and leadership roles is the ability to make decisions and accept responsibility for their consequences. That's what they pay you the big bucks for. So remember how you criticized your bosses for their poor decisions? Well, now you're in their shoes. Do better than them and put your money where your mouth is. Speaking of which, here is tip number 7. Be accountable. Your team will model their behavior after yours. If you're late to meetings, miss deadlines, or blame others for your mistakes, guess what? Your team will do exactly the same. Set the standard by holding yourself accountable and admitting when you make mistakes. No one expects perfection, but they do expect integrity. And again, speaking of building that authority and reputation, integrity is one of the main pillars to do that. Tip number 8. Master the art of delegation. Delegating is not a sign of weakness. If you think that you have to do everything yourself because you're the best at everything, then you are delusional because you are not, and because that's not what your role is. As a manager, you are judged for the performance of your team. You are no longer an individual contributor. Accept that. Learn to trust your team, assign tasks based on their strengths, and this is key, let them do the work. Because guess what? If done right, this will help your team to develop their skills, will make them feel valued and trusted. Oh, and I have a full video on how to master the art of delegation. Check it out. The link will also be in the description. Tip number 9. Develop emotional intelligence. If you are a manager, then irrespectively of the industry that you're in, you are now also in the people's business. And people are complicated creatures. We are products of unique backgrounds, motivations, and emotions, all of which affects our behavior, decision-making, and reaction to whatever life throws at us. And as a manager, you'll need to walk a fine line between being understanding and not letting your team walk all over you. Emotional intelligence, or EQ, is essential for navigating those delicate situations. And this is a whole topic in itself, but here is just a quick list of things that you can do to develop your emotional intelligence. A. Learn to shut up and listen. B. Stay calm. Control your emotions when dealing with the emotions of others. C. Try empathy and seeing things from their perspective. And D, coming back to the tip number 5 of this list, communicate clearly. And finally, the tip number 10, focus on time management. As a new manager, you may quickly find out that your perception of how many hours you have in your working day has been very wrong. Depending on your role and industry, you may have many people pulling you into very different directions, all at the same time. Your employees, your bosses, people from various departments and functions, your clients, your competitors, your vendors, and so on and so forth. Many new managers get overwhelmed and clam up because of this. The truth is that most of these things can be handled by better time management and prioritization. Again, it's a topic for a separate video, but here are some quick-fire tips for you. Number 1, make your calendar your religion. And you have to be a very devoted disciple. Block out your day, your week, and even to some extent your month with priority jobs, and use different colors for different types of tasks. For example, you have a purple block of 2 hours between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. on Wednesday to make a presentation, and then a green block on Thursday morning between 7 a.m. and 9:30 a.m. to make client calls in Asia, and so on. Feel as much as you can and make sure to fanatically follow your calendar and really do the tasks that you have assigned for yourself in those blocks. All the ad hoc meetings can go in the spaces left in your calendar between those blocks. Number 2, write down your priorities. In order to make your calendar really work for you, you have to have a set of priorities that will rule the allocation of time in your calendar. It can be different for everybody, but again, if we're talking just general tips for new managers, a good priority list can start with something like this. A. Know your team. B. Know your process. C. Establish and communicate objectives. Do that and you will find that you have way more time in the day than you thought before. So these were the 10 tips for new managers. May they help you on your leadership journey. Do you agree with them, by the way? Let me know in the comments below. Also, if you like this kind of content, please subscribe for more. Likes are also very much appreciated as they let YouTube know that this channel does exist. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.